In today's video, I am going to read the poem A Funny Man. It is written by Natalie Joan. Okay, and the poem I would like you to please understand each and every line. Okay, here you see, one day a funny kind of man came walking down this street. Here, he wore a shoe upon his head and hats upon his feet. Okay, these four lines, in these four lines of the poem, A Funny Man, the poet wants to say that one day a funny kind of man came walking down the street. It means the road that the poet is familiar with. He saw a man walking down the street. He came walking, understood, and he started walking down that street he is familiar with. A fine, funny kind of man. He was a funny man, understood. He wore a shoe upon his head. The shoe that we generally wear on our feet, he wore it on his head. Okay. And hats upon his feet. He wore hats upon his feet. Okay. He raised the shoe and smiled at me. His manners were polite. The shoe that he wore on his head, understood, and hats that he wore on his feet, okay, made him look funny. And this is why the poet says that he is a funny man. So he named his poem, or he gave his poem the title, understood, A Funny Man. Okay, the name of the poem is A Funny Man. He raised his shoe, smiled at me. When he looked at me, he raised his shoe. Like, why? If you see a gentleman who you respect, okay, if you see him, you feel like, as a mark of respect, what do? Either you bow down your head or you raise your head. And that fellow raised his head with a hat, with a shoe on his head. Though he looked funny, but he did it in order with respect. Okay, just to show respect. He raised the shoe and smiled at me. When he raised the head, how can he raise the shoe without raising his head? So he raised his shoe means he raised his head. When he raised his head, the shoe automatically, shoe on the head also got raised. Understood? So, what happened? He raised the shoe and smiled at me. He looked at me with a smile on his face. But never had I seen before such a funny sounding shite. The shite that I saw, I had never ever seen such a funny sounding shite. It means, sounding means it looks as if it was funny. Understood? He said, allow me to present your highness with a rose. He is respecting. I have seen he is a polite person. His manners were good. He is a gentleman, and he proved it when he raised his head with the shoe on his head. When he raised his head, actually the conversation is between the poet and the funny man. The funny man actually first gave him respect. Understood? Or showed respect. When he raised his head with the shoe on his head and smiled at him, and he actually addressed him as highness. Highness means if that fellow is either a king or queen, we always use your highness. Understood? Your honor. Do you get it? This is why the poet says he was really a great gentleman. And his manners were polite. He said, how can you say his manners were polite? Only when you are familiar with his behavior, isn't it? His manner. So here, what happened? He raised, then what happened? He said, that funny man said, allow me to present your highness with a rose. Let me give you a rose. Understood? He said, let me give you a rose with respect. And taking out a currant bun, he held it to my nose. Though he promised to give me a rose, but the reality was different. The reality is, he took out a currant bun. Understood? Sweet. Something sweet too. That is, and sweet. It means he pleased me with a sweet. You know what a bun is. Bun means that we eat or feed upon, isn't it? That we call chapati in our own language. So, and roti. You get it, what I'm saying? So, that fellow, what happened? instead of giving the poet, rose, what he did was he took out a currant bun. Understood? And held it to my nose. He brought it close to my nose. And if someone brings something to your nose, what will you do? You must stagger back. You understood? He staggered back. Who? The poet staggered back against the wall. Like I am staggering back against the board. Understood? He staggered back against the wall. And then what happened? And then I answered, well, then the poet said, well, he said, okay, fine. Well, I never saw a rose with such a funny looking smell. The poet did not hurt his feelings. Whose feelings? The funny man's feelings. He said, you promised to give me a rose. Even though the poet sensed, understood that the thing that the poet was given was not a rose. Understood? It was a currant bun. Understood? Do you get what I'm saying? Though it was not a rose, but the poet accepted it to be rose. Why? Because he did not want to hurt the funny man's feelings. Understood? So the poet says, I never saw a rose with such a funny looking smell. Such an interesting smell. Understood? With such a sweet smell. Funny looking smell. The smell is mixed with something funny. Then he began to sing a song. That fellow was a funny man. Naturally, he knows he wants to maybe, you become funny only when you enjoy life. And that fellow, actually they don't know, understood, means to them, sky is the limit. Understood? Because as far as happiness is concerned, understood? Because they enjoy life each and every moment. To them, life is full of joy and happiness. He then began to sing a song and sat down on the ground. He began to sing a song. When sitting down on the ground, he started singing a song. You never heard in all your life such a funny feeling sound. The sound of his song was a funny, understood, was such a funny feeling sound. The sound that his song had had a funny feeling. Understood? It makes you feel, understood? What? It makes you feel happy. You feel as if it is full of fun. Understood? It means that gives you pleasure, fun, happiness. Understood? You never heard in all your life you have never heard such a funny feeling sound. Such a funny feeling sound, everything is new. Understood? My friend, why do you wear two hot hats upon your feet? He said to the funny man. My dear friends, why do you wear two hats upon your feet? I said. He turned the other way about. He moved back. Understood? Other way. He took other way and hopped home on his head. It means hopped on his head to reach his home. This is how the poem came to an end. I'm sure that you have understood the poem. If you have understood the poem, please, you must not hesitate to give me a like, and we will do the question answer, okay, and in our next class. I hope you have understood everything from A to Z. Is there any problem? Can you answer? Okay, now I have 2 or 3 questions for you. Now, okay, why do you think the funny man was do you think the funny man had polite manners? His manners were polite, the poem says, in the line we have understood. Do you think? Why? Because he raised his hands with the shoe on his head as a mark of respect. Understood? And another thing you have just seen in the poem, like allow me to present your highness with a rose. Understood? With this we come to the end of this class. If you have liked my class, don't forget to give me a like. Bye.